Meanwhile, as I mentioned, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland is heading to Washington tomorrow. Before she did that, she met with her Mexican counterpart in Toronto today. They met as both countries continued to press the U.S. to remove tariffs from their steel and aluminum products. Freeland heads to Washington, as we said, tomorrow to meet with U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer. So what if the Trump administration refuses to lift those tariffs? Are Canada and Mexico considering more retaliatory measures against the U.S.? Graciela Márquez Colín is Mexico's Secretary of Economy, and she joins me now from Toronto. Hi, Secretary. Wonderful to see you. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for the invitation. It's my honor to talk to your audience.
Secretary, you said today in the press conference with Minister Freeland that Mexico is preparing a new retaliation list against U.S. 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum. Why are you preparing that list now?
Well, it's almost a year that we imposed the first retaliation list. So I think it's time for us to refresh such a list. And it would maintain some of the products that are already on it, and then we might switch for economic and political reasons. We add some other products. Unfortunately, we cannot reveal which ones because there is a process by which we need to approve them.
Can I ask you, though, just to sort of explain what you mean by adding political elements to it? We understand what a more traditional retaliatory list would look like, that it would be focused economically. What does political mean?
No, by studying what is going on in the United States and on the political arena and on the economic arena, we decided to include products that might have impact on some legislators that might help us lifting the tariff.
And is there a timeline for this list that you're working under, that you hope to have it done by?
The list is already done. It's just a matter of the process we need to follow to publish it. So we are in weeks before, at least 2 weeks before publishing it, but it's done. The list is finished.
Are you worried, Secretary, that it will prompt further retaliation from the president?
No, what we expect is that at the same time we are having very fruitful conversations on lifting the tariffs, not only in the US, but also here in Canada. So we are very hopeful to have the tariffs lift. I want to make clear, for us the retaliation list is just a consequence of the steel and aluminum tariffs. We prefer not to have the retaliation list. We prefer to have free trade with our partners in North America, Canada, and the US.
If you are confident, Secretary, that those tariffs will be lifted, if you have some optimism about that, why would you be preparing this list now?
It's just because it's part of the process of negotiating the lifting of the tariffs.
And what about Minister Freeland? Did you discuss it with her?
We discussed the general strategy of the ratification of the U.S.-MCA, but the treaty, the modernization of the NAFTA treaty, but part of that ratification process, we believe that we have a window of opportunity in negotiating the lifting the 232 tariffs.
That's actually what I wanted to follow up on. Will the Mexican government explicitly tie the exemption or the lifting of those tariffs to ratification of the deal? And by that I mean, will you refuse to ratify the deal without those tariffs lifted?
No, these are two different processes. The ratification is done by the legislation, but by the Congress, not by the executive branch. The administration of the retaliation list is done by the executive branch. So there are two different processes, but of course we understand that they have a link, and we want to take the opportunity before the ratification that we need free trade among partners that are committed to build a region that needs to compete globally. And by that I mean that we need to make a commitment on free trade.
I just want to be clear, though. I understand that there's separate processes, but you know, Canada has mused, for example, the government here has mused about potentially holding back on ratification if those tariffs aren't lifted. Are you saying there's no way to make that threat to Donald Trump from the Mexican perspective?
I don't think, for us it's very important to lift the tariffs, and we have been in this same position since December 1st when we took office.
So I understand that it's important to lift the tariffs, but is there any? Do you have any sort of ability to negotiate or any leverage if you can't utilize the ratification of the deal? Like, you're tying the two together. We hear the Canadian government tie the two together, but I wonder if that message, if there is a message to the U.S. government in any of this, to the administration in the White House.
Again, it's two processes, and we consider since the very beginning that because of our trade partnership, we don't have to have the same treatment that other countries receive. We are partners in free trade, and we need to have free trade in steel and aluminum.
We've had an uptick in the past few days of conversations between the Prime Minister, the President, the Prime Minister, and the Vice President in which these tariffs were discussed. There seems to be some momentum, at least from the Canadian perspective, on relief as far as those tariffs are concerned. What happens if the tariffs are lifted on Canadian products but not Mexican?
We also share your impression of this momentum. Our chief negotiator, Jesus Seade, had been in Washington for a number of days in the past few months, and he has the same impression. We are, I think, close to negotiating the lifting of the tariffs. That's why it's important to be here in Canada today, so that we can share opinions and we can sense how the negotiation is going in Canada, how the negotiation is going in Mexico. And actually, we might be exploring the possibility of having a trilateral agreement, so that that would make sense in terms of what we are, trade partners.
So a trilateral agreement, there is discussion about a trilateral agreement when it comes to the tariffs?
That's a possibility. So far, we have been negotiating on bilateral terms, but if we get similar proposals, we might go into a trilateral, but that's just a possibility.
And has that been discussed beyond yourself and Minister Freeland to include the U.S. counterpart?
No, it's just it's on the table. It's one possibility.
Okay, understood.
Right.
Thank you so much, Secretary, for your time this evening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I also appreciate your invitation. Thank you.
That's Mexico's Secretary of Economy, Graciela Márquez Colín, coming to us from the legislature in Toronto. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.